My friend Stacy once shared a bit of wisdom on how to sustain a long relationship. Whenever your spouse or partner does something that really drives you nuts, instead of getting upset, just say to yourself, "Isn't that adorable?" It's surprisingly effective. Like when my husband Jacob is so engrossed in doing his New York Times crossword puzzle that he is unable to hear my voice. Jacob. Hey, Jacob. Isn't that adorable? Jacob will tell you that one of the things he finds most adorable about me is my propensity to misplace things. You see, my mind is caught up in so many holy thoughts. I can't be possibly bothered by all the little details, like where I left my keys, or my phone, or my wallet. I can't count the number of times I've walked out of a restaurant without my purse. And one time, I left my bag on a bench in Central Park, and by the time I returned, it was gone. Now, Good Samaritan returned it to my apartment 2 days later with everything intact. You gotta love New Yorkers. But not before Jacob, who does all of our billing, had to cancel every one of our credit cards and change the auto pay settings on every one of our online accounts. At that point, I stopped taking a purse with me and just started carrying one credit card in a pocket when I'd go out. Well, one day, Jacob asked, "I notice you haven't used your Visa card in 3 months. Did you lose it?" "No, it's definitely not lost," I said, honestly. "I just don't remember the safe place that I left it." "You mean you lost it?" "It's temporarily missing, but it's not lost until I decide that I can't find it." Well, Jacob found that response even more adorable than usual. But it turns out it's a very Jewish response. And when I studied the copious laws around lost objects with my brilliant Talmud Havruta, Rabbi Yissaschar Katz, I felt like the ancient rabbis were reading my mind. To set the context, you have to understand that our tradition sets a very high standard for returning what is lost, where the onus is on the finder to return the lost objects to the owner. Back in ancient Israelite times, a lot of people's most valuable property could literally walk away from them. The Torah is clear. When you see your neighbor's ox, do not see it as lost. That's a proactive mandate. You must see that what is missing does not become lost. For most of us, we think returning lost property is a good deed. But in Jewish law, returning a lost object was an obligation to be initiated by the finder. And not returning a lost object was considered theft. Now, I'm guessing it wasn't that difficult to recognize your neighbor's wayward ox. It would have some identifying markers, maybe an iron brand or a name collar, what the Talmud called simanim, that would make it easier to recognize the owner and easier for a finder to return. But what about all those items in our lives that have no simanim, no identifying marks? Like that $20 bill that falls out of your pocket, or the sunglasses you drop on the subway. Surely a finder is not responsible for returning those. Here, the Talmud creates a status of hefker for those generic lost objects that they deem ownerless. that no one is responsible for returning. If you find it, you keep it. You know, like when you leave behind your umbrella, you know it's really gone. But here is the really interesting part, a window into the Talmudic mindset. When exactly does an object change status from belonging to you to becoming ownerless? It's not the moment that the object goes missing. It's the moment that you, the owner, give up on ever finding it. The Talmud calls it the moment of Yeush, despair. It's only when you feel Yeush or despair that the thing that you were missing becomes truly lost. So you see, I really was in a Talmudic mindset when I told Jacob that my credit card was not lost, because I always had faith that I was going to find it, which I did a month later when I finally reached into the right jacket pocket. But think for a moment about the profound lesson that our tradition is teaching us. As long as you hold on to hope, nothing is truly lost. Until that moment you despair, that object does not become ownerless. It still belongs to you, and it could be returned. But we can't restore it by ourselves, and we can't find it by staying in place. So where do we go to search? Well, legend has it that during temple times, in the center of Jerusalem, there stood an Even HaTo'en, a stone of lost objects. Archaeologists imagined it to look like a large pyramid with wide platform steps. On all the festivals, like Rosh HaShanah, when the entire community would make pilgrimage to the holy city, they would come gather at the center, and anyone who had found an object would bring it with them to the stone. And anyone who was missing something would go there looking for it. It was a giant communal lost and found. But the Even HaTo'en signified something even greater. The stone of lost objects was an assertion of our mutual bond. I will help you find what you're missing, and you will help me restore what I've lost. The stone was our antidote to despair. Now, if you knew that on our holy days, you and the entire community would return, well, then you know that all is not lost. Isn't it fitting that the theme for all of these high holy day services is teshuvah, returning? You have all returned, whether you are sitting here in this sanctuary or at Radio City Music Hall or joining us from your homes, wherever you are. Today, as in ancient days, I want you to imagine that we are all gathered with each other around that Even HaTo'en, where we can ask each other, what have you lost since we last gathered a year ago? And what are you seeking to find? How can we help each other stave off despair? Since this COVID pandemic hit our shores 18 months ago, 600,000 small businesses have closed. 10 million Americans have lost their jobs. 635,000 people have died of COVID in the United States. 4.5 million worldwide. And there will be many more. These numbers are staggering. And then there are the losses which are much harder to quantify, which you've told me about personally. You said, I lost my connections with my neighbors, my deli guy, my Soul Cycle friends, the people in the pews whom I love but have just not seen. I walked past my favorite Italian restaurant, the one I went to with my wife, and now it's gone. I lost my passion for my job, working around the clock from home with my children running underfoot. I missed my last baseball season of high school. I lost a critical year of dating, said a 26-year-old. I lost a critical year of dating, said a 62-year-old. Each of us carries personal losses from this past year, and almost everything feels so much harder because we are still limited in the way that we can gather together. Just 6 weeks ago, I thought things were going to look very different in here. In anticipation of full capacity, we rented out Radio City Music Hall. I cannot tell you how much I'd been looking forward to bringing in this new year with a full sanctuary and seeing all of your unmasked smiles and hearing your unfiltered voices singing. But we're not there yet. But if there is one thing we have learned in the last 18 months, it's that we can still show up. You are here, and you out there, you too are very much also here. And we have found that we can gather and connect and comfort. We can learn, exercise, even date in ways that we would have dismissed before. And we must keep doing it because this showing up is more important than ever. And while the Even HaToen no longer stands in Jerusalem, this bima, like countless other bimas around the world, can still function as our stone of lost objects. But its power can only be made real by you. The stone only works when we are brave enough to come before each other and say what we have lost. When we commit to each other, to helping each other find. You know what that's like. When we come together here and sing our Misha Berach prayer for healing, we announce the names of those who have lost their health, their mobility, their hope. And we pray with them for it to be restored. When we say Kaddish, those people who are recent mourners or observing a yard site, they stand first. And they silently announced to this congregation, I have lost my spouse, my sister, my friend. What do we do when we stand at the stone with someone who's lost something that cannot be returned? Death is so severe in its finality. Our obligation then becomes to help the mourner from feeling yeush, from sinking wholly into despair. We cannot restore for them a life, but we can sit with them, we can weep with them, we can tell stories, and help them see the glimmer of an easier day, that all is not totally lost. And remember, the Talmud teaches that when we lose an item that has simanim, those unique identifying markers, we hold out hope that that object might still be returned. We stave off despair. And that thing, it does not become ownerless. It actually still belongs to us, and it could still be returned. And so it is with people we loved. Think of their countless simanim, which return to us in unexpected ways and assure us that they still belong to us. Like when you catch yourself in the mirror and you see your mom's eyes staring back at you. Or when you realize you've started telling his dad jokes. When that song that you both danced to at your wedding comes on. When you hear your child ward off the evil eye like her booby did, tutu kinahara. When our community gathers with each other at a funeral or at a shiva, we can learn new details about a loved one we didn't know. We can actually find things to laugh about. We are reminded that we do not have to carry all those simanim by ourselves. So does your husband's college classmate who knew him since he was 18. So does your grandfather's friend who set him up on his first blind date. So does your colleague who still makes your grandmother's kugel recipe. Your community holds these memories with you. Sometimes the simanim that we remember most about our loved ones are those things that made us the most crazy when they were alive, their quirks and idiosyncrasies. Now, in hindsight, we think, they really were adorable. Each one a treasured siman, a sign of the person we loved. They reassure us that even though our loved ones are no longer walking the earth, they are not gone from our hearts or our minds. Jewish law has a lot to say about lost objects. But at its core, it is all about our communal responsibility to each other. So for a moment, I want you to look around this room. This is your congregation. You're a beautiful bunch. And if you are not in the sanctuary right now, I want you to picture the people who make up your community. Let's remind each other what the Even HaTo'en symbolizes. I am obligated to you to return what I have found. I have to seek you out. So tell us, what have you been missing in the last year? And we will help you find a job, find a doctor, find a beshert, find a new apartment, find a caregiver, find someone to talk to. And you who have lost so much, and I'm not minimizing loss for a moment, our tradition would ask you to resist despair. Don't give up on finding those things that are most beloved to you. Fight for them, and they will return in unexpected and meaningful ways. Gather with me around the stone. After these isolating days of this relentless pandemic, we've returned to this place, and we say to each other, I've lost something precious. Will you help me find it? I have found something wonderful. Tell me if you need it. You are not alone in your searching. We are with you. We return and return again to each other.